Hello and welcome to another episode of our Mega-lo-Mania in Unreal Engine. So, last stream was Monday, I believe, and earlier on in the week we put together our new game options screen, which is a very basic screen for us to kind of just get into a game with some player chosen options, and then we're just reflecting those options on the next level. So we have the island game and the island selection levels here, where we show the options in one and transition over to the other with the selected options. So there's kind of two things that I'm going to try and do today. The first one is, it would be good if our island selection had a preview of the island. So I think I'm going to try and squeeze that in somewhere. Not really sure where to put it because it doesn't really fit too well with this particular layout maybe. So if I put it next to the drop down, then it's going to make that particular area pretty big. So I might have to reshuffle things, but not one way or another. I want a preview of the island in there. Now the difference with that, with say the previous minimap that we've had before, is that in this case we don't really want to be creating the actors, the sector actors, so that the minimap can represent that. So we perhaps will need another minimap implementation to account for that. And because players should be able to choose their start locations, that's another thing that we can try and achieve with that. It's going to have some level of interaction, but probably not the same as you'd get in the game. So I'm not sure if I can make it something that can be used within the game as well, or whether it's going to have to be something that's only really for this particular kind of menu options game screen. Obviously the minimap that's going to be created is going to be shared on the kind of end result new game screen, or the, I suppose what can call it, the campaign screen, because that's obviously something we'll need there too. And then if that goes well and we get that done, I'm going to try to kind of make it maybe support multiplayer better. Obviously at the moment, if I now put that up to 2, what we end up with is 2 players that get the same screen, but there's no kind of control across here. They've got no notion of who's on what. Obviously if player 1 does start the game, we do see player 2 stuff appear over here, but it's not replicated. If we just play that again and we do it the other way around, player 2 goes in and player 1 is completely unaffected. So there's obviously kind of multiplayer issues there. Now, while this new games option is probably going to be more directed to single player, the general principle of a single player, or the first player, the host of the game, setting the options, the second player seeing those, and then kind of like almost kind of like a lobby, but we obviously is not going to be able to get that far in one go. So so I'm going to work on the it's the island selection map effectively, that we've called island selection as the level, but it's really turning into be kind of more of a new game menu, probably a kind of custom game menu, so probably like a single player skirmish type thing. As I say, depending on how we can make the multiplayer work, depends on how well that works for the multiplayer aspect of it. So we're going to need a place. That's not the right widget, is it? That's kind of our layout that we ended up not really using, so we're just focusing on this one. So we need an area for our minimap, and I'm going to use a named slot so that I can put the minimap in a very specific place. So the name slot currently takes up that space down there. What we probably want is another spacer. So keeping the spaces in so that there's some gap between the... Let's make sure that's in the right place. Yep, that's fine. So making sure there's a gap between the top options. Maybe that one doesn't actually need to be there. So we've got this name slot, but we are going to need probably a horizontal box. No, actually I think a vertical box. Vertical box will be better. And that means we can have some text above there. Yep, and that one in there. A spacer. So this text block is going to say the same font as the others. Maybe start location. So that's one reasoning of putting this minimap in. We can actually allow the player to choose where they want to start. And this name slot will be the minimap. So we're going to need a new widget for the minimap. And the minimap's really just going to be a grid, but I'm not sure if we can use the uniform grid, basically, because we've tried before, and the way the images work, they don't quite conform to a uniform grid. So we're just going to pick. Okay, so we have the map. So we're just going to drop in a couple of images to make this grid. Minimum slot size will be 16 by 16. Where does that leave us? Yeah, made that full screen and it's not. That's better. In a matter of fashion. Okay, so at the moment there's just 2 grid parts on there. Space all these out. So we're going to need things 4 by 4. So we're going to say that the put it in the middle. I think maybe what we want to do is have a size box. That's going to give us an ability to specify an explicit size for this. So we want I think it's just 4 by 4. So 96 width and 96 height. And then just be able to rearrange these so we fill that space. So as I thought, in this case what it's kind of done is, because the grid is always the same size, we can't get our tiles in this case to line up. Pick the one I want. Doesn't suppose it matters, that one will do. suppose we could potentially up the left. Doesn't seem to move them closer together at all. That's not too unexpected. Yeah, so there won't be a way to get the uniform grid to actually show them correctly. Let's try a horizontal box. 3, 4. Size box can't have two things in it, so we need a vertical box. Yeah, so even with this, it's gonna prevent them going too close to each other. Kind of means that all I can really do is pretty much what as I had before. And that's just lay them out myself. So for that we want the canvas panel. Actually we'll just replace that with a canvas panel. We don't want the horizontal box. To align them to a grid of 1. I think they actually have to be overlapped a little bit, but we'll the one that I want is forest. This one will line up so that we can get all the bits in the right place, all the shapes. I think what I'll do is delete them. So he's got the right, or at least got the start of the right text, so it's easier to find the ones that I need. Trying to click and drag at the same time, and it needs you to select and then drag. So once we've got all the pieces lined up, then we can just put the logic in there, and we already have the data table with the right information to create the map. And we already have the player selecting the map, so it should be fairly straightforward. That's in the right place. So the canvas panel, don't want to make that too big. Don't think we need the size box, so I'm just going to switch that out. Probably don't need that canvas panel, to be fair. We'll keep the second canvas panel because I think that kept the order. Hello again, Metatheus. Yeah, I was a fan of the Amiga as well. Mega-lo-Mania did come out on the PC too. It came out on quite a few different computers, whatever, at the time, but I think its best one was the Amiga, so far as I know. Okay, so that should be about aligned. All the images. So before we name them, I think that based on the location, so we'll refer back to our original minimap. Maybe I'll just call it the map, yeah. Yeah, so I created another index. So the reason, just so that it's clear, the reason I'm not using this iteration of it is because it tied the creation of the minimap to the sector actors, and on the menu, which is where we're trying to apply this, or the kind of options page, we don't have any and don't want any of the sector actors. So we purely want to render the minimap, as I've called it, on the island, based on the island that's been selected. So we're just going to have to order these now. Oops. Did not want to delete that one. And by renaming them, we make them variables as well, so although some of them seem to be variables anyway, but they at least show up as bold, so imply variables. Scorched Earth. Not sure I remember that one. No, yeah, I do. I remember that one. Yeah. Yeah, that one was quite good for its time. It's definitely another one that's kind of been redone quite a few times in various ways. Um, yeah, there certainly was a lot of the older games that were good. That you can see a lot of influence in more modern games. And I think that Scorched Earth is probably one of those where there's lots of kind of variety on various remakes in various ways. Yeah. Yeah, I think calling it an RTS kind of compared to modern RTS games is a bit of a push. But it certainly was an RTS for its time, and one of the first, at least that I know of, that kind of had all the core components of an RTS as well. It kind of had the research and the kind of base building and the unit management, that kind of thing, all kind of was there in the game in one way or another. Okay, so now I've got my 16 images. Gonna put them straight into just like I did in this case, straight into an array so that I can use them more easily. I just called them images, yeah, seems like a good choice. Oops. That's probably not the way we want to do it, is it? Haphazard array of images. How long? Quite a while. Probably going on about 2 months now, most of which has been streamed. I came to Unreal Engine with as good as no understanding of what to do or how to do it, so up till now it's been kind of prototyping solutions and trying to find the right way to do things. I think I've kind of got to the point now where I'm confident enough to at least feel like I'm doing it the right way, or closer to the right way, so I can actually make some proper progress in terms of trying to build up the actual game instead of just bits and pieces that kind of work independently but don't really work together. But I think obviously kind of coming into this with no understanding of Unreal Engine has made it difficult. Yeah, just both, in fact. It's been both the engine and the project. I hadn't used the engine for anything before. I maybe did, maybe bits and pieces, but very little of experience with the engine before I started this. But programming, yes, I'm a programmer by day. That's my day job. But predominantly I do software. So in terms of actual game programming, I have very limited experience in that. And in some regards, programming is programming. So it's like, yeah, that's great. I can program, therefore I can make a game. But when it actually comes down to it, I think being able to program and being able to program games is not going to be the same. Yeah, I'm hoping, I'm not particularly lucky generally, so I'm hoping that a lot of time and effort will be the right way to go here. Put the time in to learn how to do it. But it's obviously always in and out of other things, real life and all. Okay, so we have our images. We can now access them and use them. And we have our options screen. Now our options screen has the selected island, which we change here. So when this changes, we need to re-render our minimap, as we're calling it. So 3 years experience on Unreal Engine, you're up to like pro level then, yeah? Yes, sounds good. I mean, I think there was one of the main things about this engine is that it's not, you don't actually have to delve into code, and I think perhaps having the graph, I just think it's a fun, different way of coding, so it kind of feels less like my day job, which I think helps a little. But obviously from other perspectives, it's just connecting objects together, connecting the nodes together, and I think some people probably find that a lot easier to learn than sitting down trying to read lines of code. Even though, yeah, certainly the flowchart methods are. It just takes away a lot of the tediousness of programming in some regards as well, and also kind of having to remember the syntax or failing to do something because you forgot a semicolon or whatever it is on the language. Yeah. But yeah, I think I agree, it's a lot less error prone as well. So in our options, we're going to need to render our minimap. So I'm going to rename that to our minimap slot. So that populates my row names and does some pre-selection. So I'm going to have to create my minimap somewhere in there. We want our minimap to be shown after our selection of the island, which we know this code calls, so we can probably put the minimap down there actually. So first thing we'll do is we'll just remove the child. It may not have a child, but it may already be showing a minimap, so we want to get rid of it. Do I have to give it one? Shouldn't need to be giving it one. Nope, that's fine. And then afterwards, we'll want to add a child after we've random comment. So we create our minimap. And add it. So obviously start with, we've got basic map that we've already created, kind of placeholder. So unfortunately there's a little bit too much height there with the full map. Let's just get rid of the second player for now. Yeah, a bit too much height. I think our button seems to fall off just by a little bit. There's quite a lot of spacing on the select boxes actually, so maybe there we can save some space on these. The font. That's content padding, maybe that. I think that's just the internal size, isn't it? But yeah, that's got our size back anyway. Maybe the button could be a bit smaller. It's a bit better. Okay, so our map's in place, and now we just need to select the right one. So firstly, we need a variable for the island, which is going to be a name, not a string. A name, instance editable, expose on spawn, and it's going to be a single value. So I think islands is the list of actual islands, and the sectors, I believe, is the one that I had before that actually lists the sectors. Yep, index and location, that's what we want. And for the island, resources and building locations we don't need, but we need the others. So that gives us this one. Row. We don't want a row yet, we want get data table names. So you have to get all the names of that data table. Should maybe keep that data table up. And then we need to iterate over them. And then we need to get the actual row, and for each row we want to only use the ones that are for the actual island we are on. 15. Yep. So the location within our data table is 0 based. So we can see there's some zeros in there, which means our location here is going to map to an image in our array. So from our images, we can get a copy for the location. Now, yes, I think like we did in this one. I think they are all hidden by default in this case. Yeah, I thought so. Which is probably what we want to do in this case now that we've seen it work. So we'll hide them all by default, and then we can make the ones that we actually want for the particular map to be visible. Set visibility to visible. So that should give us the right shape. Nope. Where did we go wrong? Ah, we don't set the name. That's why we went wrong. Probably want to check. Not equal. So if it's not equal to none, we'll go down the truth branch, else we'll print string missing island name. That way I won't fall for that again. And back over to the options page, we can see we've got the island here now, and we can just tie that in. And one thing that we are missing is the biome, but we've got the right shape now, so we can just flick through. Okay, that's not working. This should be running for each of the changes, so it definitely runs for the first one. Pick a different one, runs again. Maybe I do have to provide it with a widget. Maybe just remove child out instead then. Should only be one child on this particular slot. Pick a different one. Yeah, so that worked. So we can get the right shape now. No keyboard control on that. Really know what that's doing. Yeah, it'd be nice if there was some way to control the keyboard, just and then I can flick through it. Oh, okay. So I can kind of do it. Maybe. Anyway, keyboard control not so good for the widgets. So in here, when a add sector is done, where are we getting the biome from? Map components, yes. Yeah, so we're figuring out which map type it is, where the coastal areas of that particular sector is, and then from that we're using the map components to get us the appropriate bit, using better sprites. Still need to rename that. Okay, but I think that we do that with an array of sectors, don't we? Yeah, so rather than doing all of this all in one go, to take that and put that in a function. Should have just done it with the do that instead. So this function will get us the island sectors. And we want another function for get island biome. Should be fairly straightforward. Get data table row. So we just need to get that island from the data table, and the row of that will give us our biome, which we need to return. That one, that one, that one. So at some point it would be good to just put in the not found case, so that it's not going to catch me out, but for now that should be fine. So in this function we need to build up an array of sectors. Now we need that array because we use the kind of position of items in that array and things like that to calculate the type of sector that particular sector is. So another variable, sectors. I think actually I used the sectors object as a whole. So that should be the structure. So if it maps to the island that we want, we just add it to that sectors array. Sector type. So this, yes, okay, that's not quite the object, is it, that we need? So in this case, because we're using the sector actor, the actor had a type. So the type is calculated from one of our macros in our library. Could be in the global. Nope, not in the global. Yes, identify sector type. So in that case, we give it an array of sectors, we give it a location, and from that we get a string. It's our sector type name. So once we've got all our island sectors, we now then want to iterate over those. And with those we can get the location, and then from that we can get, or we can use the sector type for call. So the array element, we'll need to break to get the location. That gives us a sector type, and then using the sector type we need to get the map component. So I think what we'll do is we'll create another function, brush, get brush for sector type. So in this one we have effectively a sector type of row name. So we'll take that, all of that in here. So we pass in the sector type, and we'll pass in the biome as well. And we will pass out our bush, our slate bush. So slate brush can be used directly on the appropriate image. So now we've got all those little helper functions done. Where did I put the biome? Was that in the get island? Oh, get island biome. I didn't call that. Event graph. So I call the get the biome second, or sorry, first. Pass that in there. Get the image for the location, set its visibility to true, and also set brush. To the brush that we got out of there. So it's probably not going to work first time. Missing some information. Yes. So for each sector, no, that's fine. For each sector, get its location, get the type, get the brush, set the image to visible and true. We're definitely setting the image, the map shape correctly again, just not setting the brush correctly. Oh, that one might be something to do with it. Yeah, there we go. So I think that should be all of them then. Yep. So that's our minimap done. Now we actually want to be able to click on one of those sectors and specify our start location. So the tedious way, and probably just the cleanest and quickest, if not tedious, is to literally have the on mouse button down event on each of the sectors, and then from that trigger the appropriate method. So within our yes, I think so. So I tried to do it on the canvas before, or I think I had something above the canvas, didn't I? Something that can take a button. What did I have in this case? Canvas panel. Yeah, so I didn't have the event on this before. I had the event on the canvas panel. On mouse button down. So I don't know how reliable this was, but I'm going to go actually for this way because it's so much quicker to set up. If I find it to be a problem, I can always change it. So I call this the container. Doesn't have any size. And the container how did I get that button? Figure out where that button came from. Maybe that's just actually, maybe it's got nothing to do with the container. This button down. Yeah, nothing to do with the container. So let's turn that off as a variable then. So just apply the same logic that we had before. Want an event dispatcher. And that has a location. Integer. That's the wrong version of it, that's why. So we need to make sure we stop the loop once we have triggered the event. We'll do return here, so that's fine. So since this is a minimap on the options screen, we can handle it in here as well. What we need to do when that clicks though is to display another image for the castle. So they're actually these little blue squares, or a blue square. doesn't really matter where these are to start with, because I will position them as players pick a space. So we always have red first. Seem to have that sprite twice. And then green, blue, and yellow. So as I say, I'll position them programmatically, so I'm just going to position them on the top here so that we know they're not in the right place. And by default, so I will actually take them out of the container. So that's going to be green, blue, yellow, red, green, blue, yellow, yep. So depending on the player that's actually selecting the space, we'll select the right castle. At the moment we're just working on a single player, so they'll pick their team and they'll pick their castle. If they change their team, or they change their god or character or whatever we want to call it, then what I'll do is I'll just remove the castle from the map. So the player, the option screen does need to know the start location of the player, and it needs to know, sorry, it doesn't need to know anything else, start location of the player. And yes, so we need, because we need to tie to an event on the minimap, we need to tie to that selection event, which we have created in our graph, our sector selected. I think what we can do is, when we create it, we will store it. And then we can remove it more specifically. Going back to this one, just because now we've got it, we might as well be more explicit what we want to do there. Close that one. And yeah, so we have to bind the event. But we also want to make sure before we remove it that we unbind to it. Before we remove it, so I'm not leaving anything lying around. And when a location is set, we simply want to set the start location. When the there's the button where we change our character. So we're changing our character kind of, rather than event-based, we're basically just checking every image rather than handling the click on each of them. Probably a bit of a heavy way of doing it, really. Must be doing it differently than that. Yeah, because that's just setting the opacity of the character. Where are we setting the character? Oh, okay, we're setting it. We've got a button for each of them. That makes more sense now. I think we need to push this a bit higher up though, so rather than having it on each of the buttons itself, can we get to the event graph? It's just on clicked. Let's try that one. No. On selection change, or yeah, on sector. We can call that function. Thought so. So over on our event graph, we can. Island is first. Opponents is. Which order is this? Island, character, and opponents. So in between them two, we'll add a custom event. And this will be on change character, and it will have the character passed in. Now with that, what we can do is make sure we set the start location to 0 as well. I'll do that actually afterwards, just so we're not overlapping that value. So every time if you change your character, you lose your start position. That firstly just makes it possible to reset, but also kind of an easy way of keeping the colour of the castle that you are selected and the start location you've selected. Still not doing the highlight on the map yet, but that's the start location. So yeah, so we've got these functions here. So instead of setting it directly, we'll just want to call on change character and pass that value in instead. Can go. I should just check that works. Got to do more than one, I think, 'cause red's by default. Test green instead. So obviously red by default, we should see scarlet there. If we run it again and we press green, we should see Caesar. Yep, so that's working just fine. Let's finish them off. Got it. Yeah, forgot to make my little castle icons invisible. Let's hide those. So now when a sector is clicked, we need to put the appropriate castle down for that player. So we can handle the event here straight away. The problem with that is it's not going to tell us who it is. So if we do it now, okay, we don't get that event. That's not too much of a bad thing. On sector changed. On selected sector. Get that right. It's a custom event anyway, so we'll just rename it. But we also want in there a name. Just done it like that so I can tie that up. Actually, print that. Just need to tie that up first. So we don't need those functions anymore. Here, after we've set the location, we then want to call on the widget this one. That one instead. That one. Let's make sure that's a bit more obvious. So once we've selected it, we want to take that and call on selected sector changed. We pass back in the location. That's not necessary because the widget should know it or could know it, but we pass it back in so it's all self-contained, and now we'll have the character come up on the left, so we know what the character is. And then we want to select on that name. Is it select? Yeah, because we want that. Let's try again. That first. Select. Okay, switch on name. Not really what I wanted to do. So we need to pick the right castle. Red, green, blue, and yellow. Unfortunately, we can only pick a integer, a byte, or a boolean, or an enum, and what we have is a name. What can we do with a name? Utilities. Switch on it. Yeah, it just returns us, so that's not it. The annoyance with this is it gives us multiple execution branches. Which isn't really what we wanted. Okay, never mind. Make it work. Toggle castle visibility. So take those, paste them here. Equals. So if the castle input is equal to our red one, no, this is going to be too tedious as well. Do it this way instead. If we have the if statement there, we have to have more code than if we just hide them all and then show the one we want. So that's what I'll do for now. So hidden, 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 and visible. Probably could put them in an array or handle it better some other way, but we can fix that one up later. So then for each of them we want to call our function, not that function, that function. And maybe I should just call that toggle castle visibility with our character and location and do all this inside, because then I'll be able to utilize local variables to store some and remove the duplication, but it's fine. So I need all their names again. It's one of the reasons again why I said before that perhaps having the names of the opponents in a table or an enum would be beneficial. Oh, it's tedious. Broke all my links. But for now, okay, so we don't get rid of it. We need a button. Actually, remove that. Default pin, that's what I was looking for. Add the default pin. So we'll keep the same function and we'll use the same function. We just need slight addition of a is valid on our input castle first. That, and that way we can be sure that we're going to set it. And then in this case, sorry, not in that one, in the minimaps event graph, we can therefore utilize the same one, same function even. And just pass in no castle. We haven't used the location yet, that's the next bit. So over here where we set the location, we want to call that suppose really we could just set the right castle, can't we? Although we've got no location. Let's see if this works actually. That should just change the... Oops. Now what? Need not the slot, the actual map. Yeah, actually that works better. We don't need to clear it and reset it, we just change it. But what we do need to do is put that little icon in the right place. So we've got a location. So from our images, we can get... We'll just do it for red for now. The appropriate... Oh, go back. Get the appropriate image. Now we need to know its location, and for that we want its slot. Get its slot. Position. Transformation. How did I get its position? I did it in this one for highlight sector. So we got the slot. Oh, just get position. Canvas panel slot. Yes. Cast to canvas panel slot. Panel slot object really doesn't have much then, does it? Nothing useful in the canvas panel slot, but anyway, so we can convert it. We know that it's all the images are contained within a canvas panel that we've called container, but a canvas panel nonetheless. So we can cast it without any real concern. Then we can get the location. And then for our, again, castle red, we'll just do it for this one. Set position. Right. Get slot. Do we have to cast that as well? Yeah, we did have to cast that as well. Cast that too. And set position. Now we'll just set it in the same position for now. I'll tidy that up in a moment. But we will need to offset it shortly. So we put it in the top left, and now we need to offset it. So we can do add. And we could figure out how big it is, but I know how big the map is. We'll use the right value. And it's not going to change, so once I get these values right, should be alright for its foreseeable future. 8. One down. Should be about right. Not quite. Depending on its type, it looks like the offset is different slightly, because that one doesn't work quite for the top or for the bottom. Yeah, it's slightly too high on these ones up here, but it's actually perfect on a square one. It's actually correct on the bottom ones as well. It just seems like it's the top ones that's slightly wrong. I'll run with that for now again, just simply because I don't need it to be absolutely perfect. Okay. One thing that we did forget to do was, in this case, we unbind the map, but we haven't set it. So we just need a validation check. If it is valid, we'll go to unbind. If it's not valid, we'll jump straight to the remove. Actually, it's not going to be no point removing it. We'll jump straight to the create widget. So we just need to handle the other colors. I think really I'll take all of that, put it in here. Just need to tidy that up. And the location. Should be fine. So now it should work for any of them. Once we've put in the location into this one, not this one, the event graph. So I want to try and deduplicate this at some point, but don't need the location. So, yeah. We'll just call it set castle. Only if that's valid do we want to set that. So maybe it goes like that instead. That is better. Yep. Yeah. What happened to yellow? Yellow has no location. There we go. Go again. So red works, green works, blue works, yellow works. So the player can pick their place. Hello, Tusk. I'm good, thanks. How are you? So we'll have the AI would randomly pick places after the player anyway. In the actual campaign, or I suppose campaign of the original game, generally the player was able to pick first. Sometimes it's kind of like a random order. Sometimes the player went first, sometimes they went last, sometimes they went in the middle. In a kind of skirmish game, it's probably just easier to allow the player to pick because they're going to choose the map, and then they can choose their location. So the opponents would randomly find places once the game starts. One thing that I don't think I have done is when the map is changed, so when the character is changed, we just update the map, the castle selection. But in the, if the island is changed, we render the map, but we don't reset the start location, which we should do. So I think if we don't do that, one thing that I didn't try, if we set 6 and then pick that one. Yeah, I thought that might happen. So the castle is still there even though we haven't actually selected it for that particular map. Tying that up should fix that problem. So we select the map, change the map, change our player. Yeah, so the castle shows up even though we don't have a start location. So if we change the character, we only want to do this if it is not equal to 0. So if they have picked a start location and they change their character, let's update the castle. Otherwise, we just leave it where it is. So now we can change that and the castle doesn't show up. Pick a location and change, and we are good. So the only other thing that we kind of really want to do is make sure, now we've got this, they must pick a start location. Well, actually, if they don't pick a start location, it's just going to be random. So we have to figure out how to do the random. What we want is our island selection. So it's actually in the top level, the New World instance. This has our island, our character, and our opponents, and now it will have our start location. And back over in our somewhere. Where did I handle that? I think I handled it in the actual island selection game. Firstly, open that blueprint. Yep. So when we click the start button, we set the island, the character, the opponents, and next we need the start location once it's finished lagging. This one, set start location. Back over here, add another integer to our event. Save and compile to make sure that it's updated. In our island selection, we now can set the start location to Save and compile that. And in our game, we've called it the island game. We actually don't want to be doing it that way. We want to do it from here, the island game. We create our display game options widget. So find that one. And we'll add in another text box. That will be called our start location. Available when it's constructed to get start location. Another set text. So that should put our start location through. So if we press start now, we should have a start location of 0. If we play again and we click a space, we should have a start location of something, but we did not. Still 0. Did we tie it up to the start button? Options. No. So best put that in there. Now we should have one. Start location 10, start location 6. So now we just need to say, well, actually, if you haven't selected one, we need to pick a random one. Now, because this view, oh, who knows about the sectors? The mini-map knows about the sectors for the island. Might be nice then is because the minimap knows about the sectors, maybe the minimap shouldn't. Maybe the map knows too much, because at the moment the only person that, or the only component that can provide a random start location is the minimap. Just seems a bit odd for the minimap to give you a random location. Definitely, since we kind of have to get it from the minimap, pass it back to the options view, and then use it. We'll run with it for now and demonstrate it. Get random location. Now again, in this case, we're just going to simply assume that all spaces are free. But we probably shouldn't. So we need the last index, and then we can get random integer in range. I think that's inclusive. Yep. So 0 to that is inclusive, that's fine. And we use last index instead of length because it's inclusive. And that should give us a random one. Sorry, that will give us a random sector. From that, we want to get that sector, break it, and return its location. Actually, I don't like the way I did that. We combine. Much more clear doing it that way of what we're actually trying to achieve. So effectively that gives us a random location. Now in our option screen we can say when they render the map, so that's just after the map's been selected. Order's a bit wrong, that one should go first. Render the map is more of a custom event for take that, place it there instead. So all of these are now kind of input related events. Got pre-construction, eventic, input handling, and then this kind of slightly different one when something actually happens. Make sure that still works. Yep. So once we've created the minimap widget, we've set it appropriately on the class, we've bound to the event, but before we add, you want to do that? Maybe after we add. So that one, get random location. So we get the random location, and as I say, we're kind of getting it from the map because the map knows where all the locations are, and then from that we want to call the onSelected sector, which is actually over there with that location. That means when we pick a map, we get a random place, which also means if that location was set correctly, it's a bit odd, unless 0 was actually true, but I don't think it was 0, was it? That should be at least 1 or 2. Okay. So why, if my location has been correctly set, is it when I click the go button, my start location is not right? Who reset my start location? That one did. You don't need to do that anymore. So now we get a random location. Don't need you because we know what was going wrong. And we get 11. We can start it. Random location is 6. And again, starting location is 10. So that all works. Now we don't have to worry about blocking out the start game button. We know we've always got a place. The player can change the place. The player can change their colour and the place. The player can change their island and their place. But we're always going to... should always start with a valid location. Somewhere else I'm clearly resetting it. Where did I reset that? The only place I set it is there now. Unless that was really just 0. So we change the map, we change the player, click start, 6 it is. Change the map. Click start, change the map. Hard to see the red location there, but it's definitely there. Click lots of people. So something goes wrong in that case. It's definitely one of them went wrong. Quite a lot of maps to test, really. Yeah, so it seems to work most of the time. There does seem to be some maps that aren't quite working right, but I certainly haven't kind of really and thoroughly gone through every single map yet, so that's probably something I should do. I think there's definitely a number of places where I'm using a switch on the character types, character names, and they're all by name, so that's a bit awkward. Probably should be an enum so I don't make mistakes with them. But okay, so that obviously took a reasonable amount of time. As is always the way, I always set out with multiple things that I want to get done, and time seems to be against me and I only get one of them done. But I think that's quite good. We've got the mini map, we can pick the start location. Maybe could align it and arrange it a bit better. Definitely, since the mini map is here and the selection of the island is there. But we'll deal with that another time. Try and neaten up the screen at some point once we're kind of sure we've got everything in the right place. Because we don't have any limitations on opponents, obviously that would be invalid. There's a maximum of 1 opponent, so we need to deal with that. And it might be good to have the AI pick random places, but if we did that, then the player wouldn't be able to go in them without removing them, and that might be a bit awkward. So I think that's probably one advantage with not pre-selecting a place on island selection. If we left that blank and we picked the random place when they click start, then the player wouldn't know where they're going to start until the game starts. I think I prefer that. But I'm just going to put a note in. It's here. Don't select random location until start. Oh, actually, I think it's really going to be so straightforward. I might as well do it now. If it's equal to 0, oh no, can't be 0 because 0 is a valid location, so it's got to be -1. If it's equal to -1, then we want to get a random location, set the start location to it, return it. Otherwise, we just call straight through. And that will actually set our random location straight away. And then we want to put back on island change, which is here. We want to put back resetting that, but rather than to 0, we want it to -1. And then we don't do that. That means if we didn't have an error, target should be the map. And as I say again, it is odd that the map is driving that random location, but works for now. So now the player doesn't have a place. They could change the map, they still don't have a place. If they pick a place and they change the map, they don't have a place. But when I click start, I get a random place. Rather than that being -1, rather than being 0, it's just 9. So I can play here. I can start on 10, and again, I start on 6. That way the player's not going to know where they are until the actual game starts. It's a little bit more mysterious, and it does mean that you don't know whether opponents are going to be, whether you're going to be surrounded or not. Particularly in certain islands, like particularly a bit further down, I think, where there's actual which is a good one. Yeah, like this one, you could pick here and then you know you're only going to get 1 opponent, whereas if you pick here you might end up with 2. So if you're going for a completely random location, you don't know where you're going to be. It's much more mysterious. One thing that I might do is if you do select the same place twice, I'm fairly certain that moved somehow, just like a pixel down, but maybe if you select the same place it should deselect you. Oh, what's an error? Access none. So there's some error there. Since there seems to be a scenario in which false can be returned here, I think I'm just going to branch these. And print out an error. So that will be failed to get slot for location. And the location is there. This one is failed to get slot for castle. Unfortunately, I don't know what castle it is. I just know that I didn't get it. I think it's probably the second this scenario that's failing anyway. Let's just click around. I might have to add more print strings in certain other cases where failures are possible but not being captured, and see if I can identify what went wrong. So I'm not getting any errors now. Anyway, that kind of covers all the basics. There's, as I say, there's still at least one more thing to do with regards to the maximum opponents for the particular island. Need to set that according to the actual island, but since we're getting the biome anyway, the maximum opponents I think is on the same structure, but we're not getting the biome anywhere except for in the map. So that kind of goes back to the other problem where yeah, maximum players. So it's going down back to the problem where the map knows more about the selected island than the actual option screen, so we're going to have to push some of that logic back, and that means it's likely that the options will generate the sectors for that map, for the island that's been selected, and pass those sectors to the map instead of the map generating them. But that won't make any great significant difference to how all the process works. It just gives us a little bit more information on the options area to put the final restrictions in place, so they can't obviously select an invalid combination where they're playing. That would be why. Well, at least that's an issue. Let's see if I can fix that. So I was changing the character. So I'm doing not equals to -1. So instead I need to do start location is greater than 0. Well, no, greater than or equal to. at least stops that particular case. Yeah, so there's a couple more bits to do to get this options page completely finished off. Haven't addressed any of the multiplayer issues yet, or not issues, improvements, and kind of addressed how that's going to work. But obviously in its current form it doesn't really feel like a multiplayer lobby as such. It feels more like a single player skirmishy type screen, but I'd hope to try and align the multiplayer lobby and the single player skirmish. I'm sure that lots of other games, well, I know lots of other games have done that same thing, where when you're going into a skirmish, it's very similar to going into a single multiplayer game in terms of how you set that map up. So that's what I'll be looking at doing. But for now, we're trying to get the single player set done, making sure we're passing on the right information so the game can actually start. Okay, so that's all for tonight. Thanks for watching, and I should be back, hopefully have some time tomorrow evening as well, so I should be back tomorrow evening. Again, that's all for now. Thank you very much.